Hey everyone, we're back again. This is Continuing Education. I am Minister James Moss, and we are in the book of Luke, and we're starting a new chapter. We're covering verses 1 through 5, and this one is entitled, The Disciples Pick Wheat on the Sabbath. All right, so let's jump in. The end of chapter 5 has the parables of the unshrunk cloth and new wine. These were Jesus' explanation of how the message of God, of the good news, could not be confined within the rigid rules and traditions of the Pharisees, which we know as being legalism. All right, so here we go. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. And it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first, that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And certain of the Pharisees said unto them, Why do ye that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days? And Jesus answering them said, Have ye not read so much as this, what David did when himself was an hungered, and they which were with him, how he went into the house of God, and did take and eat the showbread, and gave also to them that were with him, which it is not lawful to eat but for the priest alone. He said unto them, that the Son of Man is also, or is Lord also of the Sabbath. All right. And so that covers our scriptures, and we're about to go into our commentary. All right, so verses 1 and 2. As these leaders continued to follow Jesus, they observed him one Sabbath day as he was walking through some grain fields. Roads often went through fields. The disciples broke off heads of wheat, rubbed off the husk in their hands, and ate the grains. On any other day but the Sabbath, this would have been acceptable. God's law said that farmers were to leave the edges of their fields unplowed so travelers and the poor could eat. This day was a problem, however, because the religious leadership had set up strict laws regarding how to observe the Sabbath. They had set up 39 categories of forbidden activities, and harvesting was one of them. According to the religious leaders, however, the disciples were technically harvesting because they were picking wheat and rubbing it in their hands. The disciples were not breaking God's laws recorded by Moses. Instead, they were only violating one of the Pharisees' many rules. Verses 3 and 4. The Pharisees would have been taken aback by Jesus' question. Haven't you ever read in the scriptures? Of course they had read this in this story about what King David did when he and his companions were hungry. Jesus explained his disciples' actions on the grounds that they were hungry and that their needs superseded the technicalities of the ceremonial law. The story is recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 1 through 6. Each week, 12 consecrated loaves of special bread representing the 12 tribes of Israel would be placed on a table in the house of God, the tabernacle. At the end of the week, the bread would be replaced with fresh loaves, and the old loaves were reserved for the priest to eat. On one occasion, the priest gave this special bread to David and to his men to eat as they were fleeing from Saul. The priest understood that their need was more important than ceremonial regulations. The loaves given to David were the old loaves that had just been replaced with fresh ones. Although the priests were the only ones allowed to eat this bread, God did not punish David because his need for food was more important than the priestly regulations. By comparing himself and his disciples to David and his men, Jesus was saying, in effect, if you condemn me, you must also condemn David. Jesus was not condoning disobedience to God's laws. Instead, he was emphasizing discernment and compassion in enforcing the ceremonial laws, something the self-righteous Pharisees did not comprehend. People's needs are more important than technicalities. Verse 5. When Jesus said that he, calling himself Son of Man, was master even of the Sabbath, he was claiming to be greater than the law and above the law. Jesus meant that he had the authority to overrule the Pharisees' traditions and regulations because he had created the Sabbath, and the Creator is always greater than the creation. Jesus claimed the authority to correctly interpret the meaning of the Sabbath and all the laws pertaining to it. Who created the Sabbath? God did. Therefore, because Jesus, the Son of Man, is God's Son, given authority and power by God himself, he is also master of the Sabbath. All right, and that concludes this one where about Jesus uh, and his disciples eating wheat on the Sabbath, which is again another very profound thing because the Pharisees was trying to catch them on any little technicality that they could, and it just was not working in their favor. Okay. Yeah. So look, the more we study, the better we get, the more knowledgeable we are, the less that people can pull the wool over our eyes when it comes to the word of God and what to expect and what we know. All right. So with that being said, always keep God first, stay in prayer. Hey, support this ministry by telling other people about it, share it with friends, family, neighbors, enemies, you name it. And by all means, continue to study. God bless you.